Thank you for being here. We've just heard a significant amount of stuff that's thrown at us. We've heard from, I've heard things from Moody's being quoted, different organizations, CBO, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Nobody's talking about the consumer. So let's do a couple of things here. Let me ask a couple of questions here. Mr. Cruz, over the last 10 years, are Americans paying more for health care than they were a decade ago? Yes.
I think so, but I don't follow the healthcare issue. But
All
yeah.
right. Doug?
I know I am.
Healthcare spending per person has risen in the United States.
Okay. Also to you, are Americans more healthy now than they were a decade ago or less healthy?
Less healthy by many measures.
Okay, thank
Life
you.
expectancy, obesity, we can go down.
Are there more regulations in healthcare over the last decade?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's number one. Number two, are Americans paying more for energy costs now than they were a decade ago? How about just 3 years ago?
Yes.
Okay. Paying more for gas at the pump and for the cost of electricity in their home.
Yes.
American businesses are paying more for electricity. Are there more regulations, Ms. Harned, in the energy industry now than there were just a few years ago?
Yes.
Okay. So, all right, let's go to another one. The cost of capital, okay? Banking industry. Are Americans paying more to borrow money now than they were just a few short years ago?
Yes.
Okay. Are there more regulations in the banking industry and in the financial industry today than there were just a few years ago?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now we've got the transportation sector. We've got just a few years ago, pre-pandemic, the price of transportation had kind of leveled off. Are Americans paying more for transportation, cost of vehicles, cost to fly on an airplane, you name it across the board? Are they paying more now than they were just a few short years ago?
Yes.
Are there more regulations in place today than there were just a few short years ago?
Yes.
Well, there seems to be a very common thread here that the more that this place regulates, the higher costs go. Now, look, I'm going to put my small business hat on here. I ran a dental practice for 25 years. Every single time the federal government stepped in the middle of it, it drove healthcare costs up in my practice. All right, we've talked a lot about the bureaucracy here in D.C., but there's a sub-bureaucracy that's been created in the private sector to deal with the bureaucracy in D.C. So now you've got the White House, you've got the Senate, you've got the House, you've got the bureaucracy, you've got the private sector bureaucracy. All of this stands in the way of American progress. Fair statement?
Absolutely.
All right. So let me ask you, let's go back in time just a little bit, okay? Let's go back to the mid to late 80s. All right, Mr. Cruz, this one will be for you. We had the most regulated telecommunications industry in the world, right? Ma Bell
That's right.
controlled all of the long distance, right? We deregulated them. Are Americans paying less money today for their long distance and communication services than they were in the 80s?
Sure, there's a lot of innovation that emerges from getting rid of government-supported monopolies and expanding, and
Yeah.
it's a good thing to do.
So right now, what my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have been advocating for, and what we have seen consistently from this administration, is that they're going to regulate more and more and more to control the business environment, and it's going to drive the cost up, and then they're going to want to give everybody a subsidy so they can afford the cost of the regulation that they put in place. That's a mell of a hess. I mean, it really is. I mean, that just creates a significant problem. So why aren't we thinking about things in a different vein? We deregulated telecommunications industry, and we got the greatest period of innovation and technology that we've ever had. Why don't we do that on transportation? Why don't we deregulate healthcare? Vertical integration in healthcare is strangling people's ability to access care and utilize the system. By the way, doctors are getting paid less, and everybody else in between between the patients getting paid more. Is that a function of regulation?
Yes.
So I think the basic notion here is that the more that this place regulates, the more it costs consumers, and for consumers to afford it, the government then has to provide a subsidy. Why don't we just get the middleman out of the way and let the consumer go direct to the provider? Doesn't that make sense? All right, with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.